Well, hello there and good afternoon. It is the day after Election Day, Wednesday, November 9th, 2022. Welcome to our weekly live streaming podcast. I'm Patrick Finkston. I write the Illinoize.com, the political newsletter, and we are all a little short on sleep. Our nerves are all a little frayed. But we have survived another election in our wonderful state, and we're going to bring in some really great people to talk about what they saw, what the takeaways are, and what it means for you in our show today. I wanted to first go through a few results as we have them as of noon or so today. Governor J.B. Pritzker reelected, 54% of the vote over Republican State Senator Darren Bailey. Democrat Kwame Raoul wins. Democrat Alexi Janulius wins the Secretary of State race over Republican Dan Brady. This was a race where Republicans maybe had a modicum of hope, but it followed the trend for straight Democrat down the ticket. U.S. Senator Tammy Duckworth, also Susana Mendoza, wins re-election handily over McHenry County Auditor Shannon Terezi. U.S. Senate, Tammy Duckworth wins handily over Republican Kathy Salvi. Sean Casten wins the 6th district. Bill Foster wins the 11th district. Lauren Underwood wins the 14th district. And the constitutional amendment, the Workers' Rights Amendment, Amendment 1, whichever you want to call it, is currently not hitting the 60% threshold that is required for the easy passage, 60% of votes on the question. It also has a secondary path to passage if it hits 50% plus one of all of the votes that are cast in the entire election. So we don't have a number of all of the ballots that are that have been cast as of this morning. When I was looking at it late last night, it looked like it was close, within 5,000 or so votes potentially. So hopefully we'll get a number from the State Board of Elections on that as well. And in the two Supreme Court races in the Chicago area, the suburbs, Elizabeth Rochford beat Mark Curran, and Mary Kay O'Brien is likely to beat Michael Burke, the incumbent state Supreme Court justice. So that's kind of the quick rundown. We'll get to some legislative stuff too. First, though, we are going to bring in two wonderful folks to discuss some of this with us. We are pleased to welcome us former state representative Latessa Wallace and current state representative Mark Batnick. You guys have muted yourselves, so I don't know that I can. There we go.
Yeah.
All right. So first, you two served together in the House. Latessa, you're a progressive Democrat. Mark, you're kind of a centrist Republican. It's nice to see that after a bruising, battling election season, hey, look, Republicans and Democrats can still talk to each other. So first, welcome and thank you guys for being here. Mark, I've got to start with you.
Thanks.
Because this is everything we heard in the last week or so was that things were closing for Republicans. It was going to be whether a red wave nationally or a place where Republicans were going to pick up congressional seats. The governor's race was going to be closer than we expected. The Senate Republicans, somebody told me they thought they could pick up as many as 6 seats yesterday. None of that happened. It was a clear repudiation of Republicans, specifically in the suburbs. What happened?
Well, I think when you have, I watch the show Air Disasters, and we have a bad night like we had last night. Sometimes it's not one thing that makes things go. It's like when a plane crashes and you're watching these shows, it's like 3 or 4, even 5 things all happen at the same time. So I think we're going to have to reconstruct this. Obviously, the Roe v. Wade issue, and the Dobbs decision mattered large. Except, I was begging for the approach of talking about, of actually addressing the issue, talking about extremism on the Democratic side, the removal of parental notification, how that literally protects child rapists and sex traffickers. And nobody really wanted to go that direction. Bailey didn't go that direction. You counter that with what DeSantis did down in Florida, where he actually, addressed the issue that said, "Hey, well, where are we going to draw the line?" And he did a little bit better. So you had the Dobbs decision. You certainly had Trump weigh. Trump had a bad night last night. And then the other thing that I would say in Illinois specifically, I don't know how this plays in the rest of the country, but the money and the map matters. So if you look at a race like Marty Moylan won by 7 points, nobody did anything there. Nobody spent any big money. I would have thought, if you would have told me Marty Moylan was going to win by 7 points in his district, I would think we would be picking up seats.
Well, I live in that district, so we got mail from Moylan every day for the last month, and the outside group, the John Tillman group, was spending money in that race too for Lupo. So Moylan was on TV.
Yeah,
wasn't Moylan on TV?
There was not the network TV that you had.
Right, cable.
Spend. There was nowhere near the spend that you had, like say in a Hirschauer district or in my district, my replacement. So yeah, that's right. You are in that area, but. To that point, though, you have a district like that where we only win by 7. I'll be interested when we're looking at the precinct level data, how some of these districts where we lost by 5 points, how those candidates did versus a generic person on the ballot. Because when you're outspent 3, 4, 5, 6 to 1, that has to make some sort of an impact.
Letessa, you've got an interesting background here in the fact that you served in the House, you ran for lieutenant governor in 2018, and for Congress in the 17th district this year, finishing second in the primary to Eric Sorensen, who looks like he's going to win in the 17th district. When you and I talked yesterday, I don't know that I can say this publicly. I don't think it was off the record that not a lot of Democrats were super optimistic going into that race. So how did they exceed expectations as we saw those numbers come in? And
I think that I think Representative Batnick is right. When you think about the money, the role of money, and the role of the grassroots, what I can say about the 17th district is that people were really excited around the issues that were at stake. The Dobbs decision had a huge impact, even in rural portions of Illinois, which a good chunk of that particular congressional district is. What you saw was Congressman-elect Sorensen pulling off large counties like Rock Island County, where he currently resides, Winnebago County, where he was born and raised, Peoria County, where there's a large Democratic population, as well as an increasingly blue McLean County, with the new Democratic state legislator coming out of McLean County. I think all of those things kind of played well together and created a situation where we were able to get Sorensen over the top. But yes, as recently as 24 hours ago, people were very nervous about how that particular race was going to go.
So I'm not one to try to toot my own horn too much, but of course I have to a little bit because I host this and I have an ego. But I want to play a clip from WGN last night where I got to hang out with those guys about what we saw with the numbers. I just want to play this real quick.
This race was decided in the suburbs. So as of a few minutes ago, in suburban Cook, Pritzker's at 65%, in DuPage 57%, Lake 56%, Kane 53%, McHenry 55%, and at 50% in Will and Kendall County. This is a suburban repudiation of what the Republican Party is today. And if Republican primary voters don't get the message that it's time to rid yourselves of the charlatans that think that anti-trans, anti-gay, anti-everybody that isn't a white Christian who prays the same and does the same and wants no government and no taxes, you're never going to win. Republicans will never win if they continue on the track they're on today. And I pray that Republican primary voters get the message, because this isn't working.
Mark, am I wrong?
So the whole thing played on my screen without getting the without me hearing
Sorry,
the voice.
I essentially said that Republicans need to stop playing these far right, hateful kind of messages, anti-gay, anti-trans, that have really hurt them in the suburbs, and they need to find candidates that can moderate themselves.
Well, I mean, I don't think we played that message. I think that message was played on the TV screen, but with advertising bought paid for by Democrats. I mean, you have candidates that were extremely. I mean, Seth Lewis, I remember last election was considered an Eastern Bloc extremist, and Seth Lewis is about as moderate of a Republican as there is. Now, in terms of image and branding, maybe that is part of it. You talk about in your neck of the woods. Matt Podgorski's race, I was intimately involved in. I was helping him for Cook County Commissioner, and we were pulling tapes, and he was doing 20, 30 points better than the top of the ticket. He's up. He's still in the dogfight. Everybody in his area lost. Every state rep, everybody that borders him. But I think one of the reasons why he won, as opposed to talking about those issues, he was talking about property taxes at the door with people with a plan. He was talking about crime at the door with a plan. He was talking about the issues that mattered and not talking about, all these extraneous things. I mean, the part that you touched upon at the end there, Trump had a bad night. And the candidates, the type of candidates that Trump backed in general underperformed. And I think that's kind of a similar theme to what you're talking about. I see Letitia nodding there. I don't think the Trump-backed candidates had a good night.
And this is another thing I said last night, was that this election was more a repudiation of Darren Bailey and a repudiation of Republicans out of the mainstream, specifically with suburban voters, than it was a great mandate for J.B. Pritzker. How did you see it?
You know what? I think I would have to agree with that. I think that what's happening right now is the Democrats have actually done a really good job of tying all Republicans to extremists like Donald Trump. And as long as that messaging is working, it's going to be very difficult for moderate Republicans to kind of break into office, maintain office, or what have you. What you see, I think, Representative Batnick mentioned this a little bit earlier. What you see in primaries is kind of the extreme and the fringe tend to come out and support in a primary. And then that does not work well in the general. We've seen it on both sides with Dems and Republicans, but particularly over this last cycle, we saw that people are not receptive to that message and want to talk about kitchen table issues. And that also was just pointed out, right? People want to know, how can we pay for, our food, our gas, or healthcare? People want to know what makes the most sense for their bottom line. They want solutions to the problems that they're facing every day, not extremist rhetoric.
How do Democrats sell the gerrymandering issue here? I mean, they won districts, that were heavily drawn in their favor. The Keith Wheeler got moved into a heavily Democratic district. Mark's vacating was drawn for a Democrat. The Bloomington Normal to Peoria district that Sharon Chung is going to win. I mean, McLean County electing a Democrat to the state house is not something you would typically expect. Is there a situation here where voters are potentially going to look at these maps at some point and say this is out of control, or do Democrats say we're in the majority, so to hell with your concerns?
I think it's possible that they will. Nationally, people talk about gerrymandering all the time. And of course, it's typically connected to Republicans gerrymandering maps. That's how the rhetoric goes. I believe in Illinois, though, if you use McLean County as an example, they actually have been trending blue for quite a while. And my own political experience shows that. McLean County went for Biss Wallace in 2018. In the primary, I carried McLean County in this last congressional cycle. So It has been trending blue, and I'm not necessarily very surprised that that actually played out and how the map was drawn, because over the last several cycles, it has gotten bluer than it had ever been in the past. Or maybe we can say a deeper purple as it moves closer and closer to being true blue.
And last I checked, Governor Pritzker was winning in McLean County, which I don't think a lot of people would have told you going into the night they would have expected. Mark, let me see if I can pop my results on the screen here real quick again. As we go through House district races, this is from the Chicago Tribune website. If you go up and down the list, it was a terrible night for races that Republicans targeted. They wanted to take out Janet Yang Rohr and lost. They wanted to take out Tara Costa Howard and lost. Dan Mazzocchi is up, but probably going to lose if late arriving ballots come in as we expect. Diane Blair Sherlock won a district that Republicans thought they could pick up. Santa Litro looks like she's going to hang on. That's a district that Democrats put some money into. Targeted Hirschauer. She's going to win. Chris Boss is going to lose. And as we mentioned, Keith Wheeler is going to lose. So up and down the ballot, this was a really terrible night for House Republicans. One, they didn't raise any money at all. Jim Durkin kind of hitched his wagon to Ken Griffin's gravy train, which hopped on his G6 to Florida after losing the primary. It cost Jim Durkin his job. And I know you're close to Durkin. What's your takeaway as to why Republicans did so poorly in races going into the day? They thought they had a lot of pickup opportunities.
Maura Hirschauer has been on TV since August. She has been on network TV since as long as I can remember seeing her stuff. That was a race that we invested very little money in. You're really talking about the stretch races that maybe all those races that you kind of brought up were stretch races that were brought up in the last few weeks as maybe a stretch play. I think the races, you always protect your incumbent. So you've got Bosch, you've got Keith, you've got Mazzocchi. I think Keith Wheeler actually ran. Little inside tip here. When we did the first poll for Keith Wheeler, the generic ballot was -16 in that new district. And I think he's going to lose by 5-6. There's only so much you can do to exceed, the lean of your district. You're going to protect Boss and then obviously Mazzocchi. So those are protects. The main targets after that were actually Santa Litro, Michelle Smith, who's going to lose by a couple hundred votes in my district. And frankly, that's just, I couldn't watch the World Series and not see a commercial against Michelle if there was anything.
And I think
close.
that was a D+9 district by the time it was redrawn.
And like I said, you have a situation where our candidate barely loses. This is going to be a 49.5 to a 50.5 kind of draw. So she did well versus what the top of the ticket likely did there. So you had Smith, Santa Litro, Preston, which we just talked about. Those were kind of the ones that got us close to where we were. What people don't realize is that we had 45 in the House, but we really had 41 because of redistricting. We had to win 4 open seats to get to that break-even point and then grow from there. After that, kind of the main races were Suzanne Ness and maybe Cordy Downstate kind of developed. Those were really the main targets. After that, you had a whole host of races, and I am actually the one that wrote it up on the board. And Schmidt was towards the bottom of it. You had about 10, 15 races where if that map and money didn't hold and the dam broke, if you started winning 1, 2, or 3 of those, you felt like you could win a whole bunch of them. And all those were lost in that, 5 to 10 point range.
You mentioned Schmidt. That's the one kind of unlikely pickup that Republicans are going to get. It looks like they're going to beat Latoya Greenwood kind of in that St. Clair, East St. Louis district. Before we move on, Mark, in terms of who should be the House leader, it looks like Marty McLaughlin from Barrington Hills is making a play. It looks like Tim Ozinga might be making a play. Maybe Ryan Spain or somebody in that camp, and maybe one of the Eastern Bloc people get in. Maybe a Dan Calkins or a Blaine Willauer. Who should be the Republican leader next year?
Well, I'm definitely not going to. I'm going to hear from some of the candidates, although I won't have a vote. But I can say what the qualifications need to be. You need to show that you have a handle on the campaign bucket. You need to show you have a handle on the running a campaign bucket. You need to show you have a handle on the policy bucket. And you need to show you can raise money. And if you don't have some sort of experience in those boxes, I don't think you have what it takes to be leader. So you need to be able to manage all those different things. It's a big thing managing all the stateside policy, and it's a big thing running the campaigns. You know, we did a good autopsy after 2018, and we had a good 2020, especially considering the spend. We're going to have to do that again after this last election, but I want to see a leader that actually has a vision and a path to winning some seats.
And Letessa, we'll let you guys go here, and I appreciate the conversation. Democrats now have potentially even stronger control on state government than they had before. Obviously, the governor wins a re-election. They're going to expand their majority in the House. They'll probably lose a couple of net seats in the Senate, but will still retain a supermajority. The governor clearly has his eyes on national politics. They can say he's focused on serving 4 years as governor, but there's wiggle room in the way that they're saying it. COGFA is saying that revenues are expected to crater this year. The federal dollars are running out, and you still have a progressive House, specifically House Republican caucus or House Democratic caucus that seems to want to throw a lot of money at a lot of things. How do they keep the ship afloat as the state faces the challenges, and they're going to have to do it all on their own? Oh, looks like we look. See, isn't that how technology works? You ask a hard question and she hangs up. No, it's and we'll see if we can get her back here in the next minute or two. But it's you know, I do think that's a serious question mark as to how Democrats are going to be able to manage financially when we have all of these potential financial challenges. And you're someone that's argued for fiscal responsibility for years. How do they do it?
Well, I'm actually filing a bill. They have a little bit of wiggle room, believe it or not. We're at the peak of our pension payment in terms of percentage of the budget, and I think that as that goes down, I wrote a white paper. I'll be filing the legislation shortly. It's actually ready to be filed. That actually puts that in action in terms of how to lower property taxes, so you don't start using that money for new programs. We have a history in this state of having money chase programs that aren't working instead of chasing the ones that are. The way we fund our universities is an example. ISU, Illinois State University, has grown, but we've been giving them a set pile of money per year and just giving them a little bit more kind of based on inflation. And so they get much less per student, even though they're grown and doing a good job than other universities. So we don't do a good job spending our money efficiently. And I actually think with inflation has helped our pension debt situation, and it's an odd thing I won't get into. So they do have a little bit of wiggle room in terms of the budget, but it is going to be a left caucus. We in the House used to talk about how the Senate was one of the most leftist chambers in the country, but the House has exceeded that. The people voted for it. They voted for it last time. They got it, and the House took that left turn, and they gave them a stronger majority. So I think we're just going to get more of a movement in that direction. They won the election. That's how it works.
And Letessa Wallace is back after an internet drop. Final question is to you there, Letessa. How do Democrats manage to govern with these progressive majorities that want to spend a lot of money when revenue is expected to crater a little bit? All right, looks like we're having internet issues again. So, all right. So, Mark Batnick, Letessa Wallace, thanks so much for joining us. We really do appreciate your insight, Mark. Thank you for your service in the General Assembly. I hope we'll continue to be able to have you here and there as a pundit once you move past your legislative service. And of course, thanks to Letessa Wallace, who is even though we don't see the she and I don't see the world. Mark, I know you would say the same thing. She and I don't see the world the same way all the time, but appreciate the fact that she and I can always have really thoughtful conversations.
Yeah, I always enjoyed. I mean, it's too bad she's not here. I always enjoyed my
Sure.
time in the house with Rep Wallace. So I'll have to give her a phone call and an official thank you at some other time.
All right, guys, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate your conversation. Thanks so much for being with us today on our live stream and podcast here from the Illinoize.com. And we're going to immediately transition now to bring in Brendan Moore from Lee Enterprises. He is the government reporter for those newspapers, Herald and Review, Bloomington Panagraph, Southern Illinois, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Brendan is looking casual today as he was up late. You were at the Bailey headquarters last night, right? They were seemingly a little shocked when the race got called at 7:00 and 3 seconds or whatever it was when the AP called it. What was the reaction in the room?
I think a lot of people were just very surprised. I mean, even 4 years ago when Governor Rauner lost to Governor Pritzker, I mean, I think AP waited 15 minutes to call it. I think a lot of people were just kind of confused, and then it was almost like a balloon, air being let out of a balloon very slowly as the night went on. Obviously, the governor gave his victory speech a little before 8:00. And by 9:00, Senator Bailey had not come out yet. And actually, I ran into a couple of Bailey supporters who were like, when's Darren going to speak? They had the shirts on and everything. They were big supporters. And they're like, this is kind of boring. And that kind of sums up the night that, some of these folks came for a party and they didn't get the intended result.
No party at the ball this time.
No.
It was clear though that this race was decided in the suburbs. As he didn't seem to make a lot of inward statement as to why they lost or how they lost or where they lost. Does the Bailey campaign admit to their failures in the suburbs?
He did not really, like you said, Patrick, he didn't really get into it in his speech last night, and I haven't heard anything to that effect from the Bailey folks. They really, in this campaign, tried to hone in on this message of crime. They thought that was going to resonate in the suburbs. They thought maybe there was a hidden vote there. A lot of polls didn't really pick up crime as an issue, maybe as much as Republicans thought. And perhaps that was borne out in some of those results. I mean, it appears that Governor Pritzker is going to win the collar counties by even bigger margins than he did in 2018, which is quite remarkable. All the reports of a Bailey surge, a Republican surge in the suburbs, just did not come to fruition.
No, I mean it. I don't know if we were had. I'm sure you were getting the same talk from people that I was getting. But I had Democrats as of yesterday afternoon tell me that it wasn't going to be a good night for them.
Right.
And instead the governor wins by 11 or is up by 11. They won all the constitutionals. They won all the congressional races, including the 13th, which I'll get to here in a second. They picked up seats in the House. They staved off even worse losses in the Senate than they were expecting going into the day. I'll ask you the same question I asked our guests earlier. Was this a repudiation of Republicans, or was this a hook, line, and sinker for those liberal Democratic policies?
I mean, I think there will be a lot of different hot takes on what these results mean. I suppose I would say, though, that at least in Illinois, you had candidates at the top of the ticket on the Republican side that don't necessarily match the state. I mean, Darren Bailey was the most conservative nominee for governor in a very long time. And Illinois obviously has voted Democratic in every presidential election since, I believe, 1988. and obviously voted for President Biden by 17 points. And even if the president isn't very popular around the country right now, Illinois is still a Democratic state. And I ran into actually I was at Nikki Budzinski's party last night after going to Bailey. I ran into Governor Edgar, who was there for Nikki Budzinski, and asked him, "Hey, what does this result mean?" And he basically said, "It's not anything new. Anyone who's talked to him knows he believes this, but Republicans got to move back to the center in Illinois if they want to win, because it was pretty clear that the conservative candidates leading their ticket did not do well, and perhaps help drag down the rest of the ticket. And of course, too, we should not forget that Governor Pritzker spent a lot more money than Darren Bailey. It was partially made up for by all the ads that Dan Proft was running with his super PAC, but clearly, Democrats had way more resources and perhaps a better message. I mean, the Republican message was very much doom and gloom on crime, on the economy, and on all these things. And I mean, Illinois is not in as bad of a position as it has been in the past. I mean, there have been some credit rating upgrades. There have been some, budgets have been, I guess, balanced, at least more so than in the past. There's more optimism, and I think that perhaps the doom and gloom didn't really sell with a lot of people.
Let's mention that 13th congressional district race between Nikki Budzinski and Regan Deering. I think that was on the list of a race that people going into the night thought was going to be really close, or even if the red wave was wavy enough, it could potentially take Budzinski out. She's up 23,000 votes at this point, 55-45, as Champaign County numbers kind of came in late. That's an overperformance of kind of everything we expected going in. What did they say as to what caused that really overperformance and big win for her?
Well, I think that a big part of it was that the red wave just didn't come, and the district voted for President Biden by 11 points in 2020. That being said, I mean, nobody saw that coming. I mean, I think most people thought that Budzinski would pull it out. I mean, the Republicans really didn't devote many outside resources to that race. But a lot of people, even up till yesterday, Democrats were telling me that it was going to be, like a squeaker. It was going to be, a few points either way. Budzinski's own internal polling had her. I mean, they had her up, but like it was single digits, mid single digits, and she's going to end up winning by 10,
at least 10, yeah,
at least 10 points, and which I think is again a testament to just wasn't the night that Republicans thought it was going to be. And also, I mean, she, there's a lot made about her. They tried to label her an insider, and she has worked in politics for 20 years in Washington and Springfield, but she kind of does fit the district. I mean, she talked about a lot of issues that that working class people in the district care about. I mean, she carried Madison County, which is a very blue collar, Trumpy county, one that you wouldn't expect a Democrat to do well in. And
was the place where Republicans got one of their few pickups in the night in the Senate district down there.
Right. And
two of their pickups with the Greenwood is mostly St. Clair, but
right. But she mentioned this last night. She was asked about about those blue dog ancestral Democrats that the party's lost over the years. And she's like, well, yeah, I mean, I spent a lot of time in Granite City talking to steel workers and talking about issues like trade, and that perhaps that resonated and helped her overperform even what President Biden did a couple of years ago. Should also be mentioned too that she was on St. Louis TV a lot more than Regan Deering was. So name ID helps, exposure helps, but I think that she had the message for the district, and she talked about abortion too, but she was laser focused on the economy, and I think that she didn't run away from that, even though it was a tough issue for Democrats this year. So
two more quick things for you, Brendan. I appreciate you kind of hung on as we went a little late earlier, so I appreciate that.
Yeah.
you covered the 48th Senate district race, which was an ugly, brutal, mean race between Doris Turner and Sandy Hamilton. Turner's going to win that race. It was about 1,300 votes when I finally went to bed at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. or whatever it was. But what happened there, and what does that mean for Turner moving forward?
So, again, I think my estimation is, I mean, obviously, the Senate Democrats went all in for Doris Turner. I mean, they spent a lot of money. I believe they outspent the Republicans 3-1. They still had to deal with some of those brutal ads that Doris did it about, implying that she was corrupt. And those ads really cut. But no one outworks Doris Turner at the doors. She knocked on a lot of doors, and she was everywhere from the minute that she was appointed to that seat last year. She's been visible, not just in Springfield, people already know her, but in Decatur. And so she put in the work, and she had a very robust campaign operation that got the vote out for her. Sandy Hamilton, she had an experienced campaign staff too. She had, Rodney Davis people helping her out. A lot of people thought that maybe would help. She had, SHG, Sacred Heart Griffin, Mafia background, typically works in Springfield. But she hadn't done this before. I mean, Doris Turner has been around for 20 years, and even the stuff about the Doris did it, the corruption. I mean, that's all been reported. Like, people,
but to overcome your husband going to federal prison,
right,
in a state government worker, district is huge. I mean, it's almost unbelievable.
Yes, and there a lot of people thought it would be close, but I don't think a lot of people thought she would pull it out. So it's a major feather in her cap, and also it is historic. It makes her the first Black person elected in Decatur or Springfield to the General Assembly. She was appointed last year. She's now elected. So.
And then we saw, after the shellacking the House Republicans took, that Jim Durkin will not seek another term as leader. There are some names floating around, like Marty McLaughlin and Tim Ozinga, and I would expect the Eastern Bloc folks to put a name out there, whether it's Blaine Willauer or Dan Calkins. The Republican caucus is going to be shrunk. It's going to be more conservative. It's going to be split. How do you see that shaking out, as we've had this news now for 5 or 6 hours?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Leader Durkin. I mean, when your party loses seats, that's not a surprise. But yeah, I think that we're going to see probably a lot of discussions be had, especially when lawmakers are down here for veto session. I'm sure Republicans will be having those conversations on who they want to be their leader. I think that it'll be interesting to see how some of these candidates try to build coalitions. Obviously, as you said, it's probably going to be more conservative caucus. A lot of the more moderate members have lost over the years in the suburbs, or left to run for other things. So you have the Eastern Bloc that will probably be a force in this race. Probably won't be able to get one of their own members elected, I would assume, but they could, be a kingmaker perhaps. It was interesting that Tim Ozinga donated, I believe, $1 million to his campaign the other day.
They could have used that 6 weeks ago.
Could have used it 6 weeks ago, but perhaps a show of force of, look at this money that I have, that I can help raise money and support candidates in the future. Don't know how that sells. Again, could have been used 6 weeks ago, but I think that'll be a challenge. Is that how do you make I mean, they're a super minority caucus now. They still are, and even more so. How do you fight back against that? And I think that whoever the next leader is going to be is going to have to show that they can raise money, and that they can craft a message that can compete with with House Democrats, and that's going to be no easy task, especially with the structural disadvantages, the map, and the money that's being spent against them. It's not a fun position, I imagine, for anybody to be in.
No. Brendan Moore, Lee Enterprises. Brendan, appreciate it. Thanks for all your your time and your hard work. You've done great work throughout this primary and general season. We didn't get a break this time, but always love the work you do and respect the work you do. And look forward to seeing you soon, probably during veto session in the next few weeks.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me on, Patrick.
All right. So it is post-election day. We are done. We are done with an election, and now we have to govern. And Democrats are going to have control of everything. Again, continue to have control of everything. Supermajorities in the House and Senate, expanded supermajority in the House. The governor has won re-election with a gigantic majority, and it's, if you're a Democrat, you're probably very happy today. If you're a Republican, you're probably very concerned today. And if you're an independent, if you're a moderate, I think it would be safe to say that there are a lot of question marks moving forward. And all I'll say is that the election's over now. It's clear who has won here in Illinois and who has lost, and it's now time to get to work. And instead of name calling and flinging poo, it's time for both sides to get together. And I hope the governor tracks to the center a little bit. I hope that the Republicans, instead of just wanting to be the guys that shout and scream and vote no on everything, actually want to participate in processes and make bad bills better, so that we can have some progress. We need progress because our political system is broken, as we well know, and where there are a lot of challenges coming in this state over the next few years. And I hope the grown-ups can show up and be the ones in the room and make some positive changes for us moving forward. Thanks so much for taking the time to join us. You can subscribe to our newsletter anytime at theillinoise.com, ILLINOIZE.com. We really do appreciate your support and all of your comments and thoughts and emails over the last few days. It's really been a great election season for us, with our views and our clicks and all of the people who are seeing what we're writing. And we're glad to have you along for the ride. It's been a fun 2+ years so far, and we're going to keep it going. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a great week, everybody. We'll talk to you soon.